wish a warm welcome to all the delegates who have come here today to this amazing session of Role of Illumination. We are very fortunate to have in front of us 4 very honorable speakers who have taken time out for their busy schedule to be with us. I would like to introduce them to you very briefly, as many of you might know them. Our first speaker is architect Sai Talla Pragada from Singapore. Architect Sai has done his Bachelor of Architecture from Andhra University College of Engineering, India. And he has done his MS in Lighting Design from University of Technology, Sydney, Australia. Worldwide exposure and experience as an architectural lighting design consultant, Sai calls upon his skill in detailing light into architecture. He trained and practiced as an architect prior to focusing on the unique relationship between line and architecture. His postgraduate degree in light and lighting has combined with a deep understanding and experience of the design and lighting equipment. He specializes in hospitality lighting and is currently working on around 10 major hotels across India and Middle East, apart from large number of other projects like residential, commercial, and retail. His architectural and lighting design awareness has led to many productive working relationships with lighting, equipment manufacturers, suppliers all across India. Apart from India, his broad international experience as a lighting designer include work across Asia, the Middle East, Australia, and America. Our second speaker is architect Sanjay Mohe. Sanjay Mohe graduated from Sir J.J. School of Architecture, founding partner of 11-year-old firm Mindspace in Bangalore. Architect Sanjay Mohe has held many positions of repute prior to that, which includes a working association of 21 years with Bengaluru's Chandravarkar and Thakur Associates, short stint with architect Charles Correa in Mumbai, and his work stint in Saudi Arabia. His work spans a spectrum of projects, research laboratories, knowledge parks, campus designs, beach resorts, libraries, corporate offices, hospices, and residences. Some of the awards won include the Golden Architect Award by A+D and Spectrum Foundation Award in year 2009. J.K. Siemens Architect of the Year Award 1991, 1999, 2001, 2004, 2007, 2008, 2013. The award of the Journal of Indian Institute of Architects 2002, A+D International Annual Award of Architectural Review 1999, London and the Line for JRD Digital Library Bangalore, Gold Medal from ARCASIA, the Asian Forum for Institute of Architecture 1998. Our third speaker is Ashmit Alag. Ashmit Alag graduated from Parsons School of Design, New York, and postgraduated in Art Institute of Seattle, USA, in visual merchandising. With over 16 years of experience in USA and India, Ashmit is renowned worldwide for his contribution to retail design and visual merchandising. In 2015, he was awarded the 40 in the 40 title by Design Retail USA, and honored by the Art Institute of Seattle, USA on their Wall of Fame in 2011. His firm Transform Design provides premium lifestyle-centric interior design and architecture consultancy and has offices in New Delhi and Singapore. In 2010, he also initiated a highly specialized institute, Academy of Applied Arts, dedicated to the field of bespoke interior design, retail design, and visual merchandising. Our fourth speaker is Dr. Sajid bin Doza from Bangladesh. Mr. Sajid is PhD from Portugal University of Évora in 2016. His specialization in PhD and history of arts and heritage studies. His interest lies in artistic appreciation of historical buildings, preservation, and cultural heritage promotion. He has exhibited 6 solo exhibitions based on cultural heritage in Bangladesh and various parts of European countries. He has 14 years of teaching experience in BRAC University, Dhaka, as assistant professor. Now let me explain you the format of the session. 20 minutes talk by all the speakers, and after that we'll be having 30 minutes panel discussion which will with the audience, and it will be a Q&A session. I think before we are having our panel discussion, I think you may ready, or you can keep your questions ready for that. So I now welcome Mr. Architect Sai Tallaprakata for his presentation. Delegates, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Hello all. Right now I'm going to just talk about architectural lighting and something beyond just achieving lux levels in projects. So as we all know, most forms of light are drawn toward most forms of life are drawn towards light, and humans are no exception. And 80% of our perception is experienced visually. So light, whether it's natural or artificial light, plays a crucial role in architecture and interior spaces. So when applying this into architecture, you can say light becomes more, like a technically hard thing, but it's still like an astonishing medium that requires a little mastery in terms of science, art, and other things to be able to apply in architecture and interior design. So at first it might seem obvious that we provide light so that we make people to be able to see a space, but then light is assessed based on how well it enables people to see the spaces. But then when we observe our surroundings, we get to see how there are many other ways how objects, spaces, or it can be materials, they appear differently when they interact with light. So say for example we consider like a day-to-day how we do judgments as to how a surface looks clean, or maybe how the fruits or vegetables we eat, whether they are fresh or not. So these things are basically observation of appearance, and this is majorly influenced by the light. And this also makes a major influence into our complex assessments of architectural spaces. But then there is a general understanding that people think when you say lighting, it's all about calculating the lux levels or achieving a lux level as per some standards. It could be just a light level based on some local standards. And also I accidentally went through this thing online from a manufacturer's website, which just says how to actually light a space. It's just saying you start with positioning a light somewhere and just make a grid of light without considering anything, and then you just see the ceiling height, divide the space, make no shadows, and evenly light a space. Then if you don't have shadows, how can you appreciate the light? So this is sort of a miscommunication, and we get many people asking, I have so-and-so space, what are the quantity of light fixtures? So I would say architectural lighting is more than just quantity of light fixtures, or calculating some lux levels and stuff. So lighting should be more human-centric, while being specific to a space or task. Which means we need the right light for our activities at the right place and the right time. So, but then there is a discrepancy between the daylight and artificial light. Like you have around 100,000 lux during, a sunny day, and maybe you have on a cloudy day you have like 10,000 lux, and maybe in an interior space in a ballroom or somewhere else you have 500 lux. Some schools, offices, maybe you have 300 to 400 lux, and other spaces 300 lux. So there is a discrepancy, and we spend 90% of our time indoors. So lighting needs to be designed carefully, and it should be more human-centric so that it can increase the vision, well-being and the perception of people living in that space. So it's more like true value of lighting is basically in layering the combination of functional, visual, and emotional benefits. So when we mean layering, it basically gives you an outline of achieving a composition in design, in lighting design. And say we look around and we see how, we get to notice how, our perception of objects change when they interact with light. And this emphasis should not be more on, more contrast. Like there is a very high contrast space which is lit very brightly and there is too much dark space. It's more about getting to see the space well at all times and still achieving an hierarchy where people are drawn, or the eyes are drawn towards, the places where the designer wants to show you. And this hierarchy, achieving this hierarchy is more critical. And like I said, when we say hierarchy, you will only be able to do it with layers. So you need some bright spaces, you need some dark spaces, and each layer should have its own, unique responsibility. But then it needs to be carefully layered to actually work together and light a space better. To get this hierarchy, we basically can consider 4 important aspects. Which are basically ambient. There can be an ambient layer, a decorative layer, a focal, and a task layer. So getting into detail, so ambient, what can ambient light be? It's just the overall lighting in a space. It's basically low, subtle, soft glows, and there are no strong contrasts. So that gives you basic illumination in a space. Then decorative lighting, it's basically to ornament the space. It gives a style, it's a statement in an interior design, and it plays a key role for interior design. Then you have a focal layer, which is more important. You're trying to, light artworks. It's basically a point of interaction in any space. I mean, you're trying to light features, artworks, displays, and stuff. And then the 4th layer can be more the task. So you need light where the tasks happen. So it could be a dining, it could be a workstation, it could be something else where someone is performing a task and you have a concentrated light at that point. So careful combination of these 4 can actually make a space well lit. And say for example, there is if the ambient layer is very low compared to the task layer, it becomes more dramatic. It could be like a museum where you have art pieces, the strong focus, and ambient level which is just low to walk. Or maybe if you have the ambient level almost in line with your task layer, it just becomes bright, cheerful. Maybe so it depends on the space, and the careful combination of these 4 things can actually make the lighting good, work for that space. So I'll just run you through a few, like an images where these 4 have been considered. More like if you see the first one, you have the soft ambient light coming from the copes. Then you have accents near the study table. Then you have some reading light. The decorative thing comes from the table lamps, floor lamps. So it's a mix of these things which can actually, and this needs to be, programmed in a way to make the space. In a similar way, I mean, like you have the last one where you have high contrast, you have the furniture well lit, then you have the decorative piece which is more strong, like a statement, and then you have the display piece. You're highlighting the display shelves and stuff. Again, in this, if you see, the soft ambience also comes from the coves, but then you have the artwork at the back, which is lit with the downlights, and again the statement and things. So if you see, they follow the whole pattern, but it varies intensities and to make the space. I mean, in the second one, you can see color plays a role there, and it's not really affecting the whole space, but it's a statement. There, the decorative part becomes more the color. So light can be with color, hue, saturation, and it just needs to play and make a space. So I just wanted to show an example of how we could consider these things while lighting a simple space. Like, say this is a living and dining area. I have all the lights off, and then you have one ambient light, which is from the soft coves. So you have the first layer, which is all soft ambient coves. It's giving you general light. You could walk in the space. You just see things. Then you have the decorative part. So this is more the style statement. You have a decorative thing over the dining. You have some floor lamps, table lamps near the seating areas. Then you have the display area. This is more the the focal point where you have the displays. It could be artwork. It could be something. Then varying these intensities, and then you have the accent layer, which is the task layer. So you have light over the dining, a little bit on the furniture. So a combination of these things programmed properly can actually get to make the space. So basically, good design or lighting design depends on how you employ these layers and what to use, what not to use, and also each technique to be used for each layer. So should I use a cove for ambient layers, or maybe should I actually use a floor lamp or a table lamp for ambient lighting in a space? Or the choice of luminaires, whether they are imposing in the space, should they be like really concealed, should they not influence the interior design, and the balance of these locations. So the lighting design should basically be in harmony with these things and add value more than just trying to get horizontal illumination as per some local standards. So yeah.
Thank you, sir. It was truly very enlightening presentation. Thanks a lot. I would now like to invite architect Sanjay Mohe to come on the dais and start with his presentation. Dear friends, please welcome architect Sanjay Mohe with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me for this function. What Sai spoke was more about internal illumination. I'm talking more about the natural light. So I would have seen sunset for maybe thousands of times in my life, but whenever there is one more chance to see a sunset or sunrise, I would stop for a while and look at it and enjoy it. Because it's a most colorful moment. The things constantly keep changing. There are these fascinating colors which happen, and they connect with your emotions. So it's not just the change of color, change of feel, change of environment. It's something which connects with your emotions. And if you ask me what is the best light that you have seen in your life, I would look at nature. And I'll go back to nature and start looking at these lights, the light which comes through this filtered light which comes through the clouds, through the leaves, through branches, especially these fields. I love looking at these green fields. And when your eye level is high, when you are traveling by bus, and when you see these colors changing, sometimes against the light and across the light, the whole field changes. The lightning, the fog, and this is something which is amazing again, the way that when the fog changes the quality of light, sometimes it totally opens up and you see the entire scenario. It's like watching a movie. The moonlight, the crisp, sharp shadows, soothing. And if you look at it, what is so special about this light in nature? I feel it's because you can't capture it. It's always changing. It's never constant. You will never be able to take two similar photographs of a flame or of these waves, because it's constantly changing, and that's what keeps captivating you. You want to possess it, you want to hold on to it, and you can never do it. So that's why it becomes more and more precious. So the point is, when you have these amazing qualities of light, is it actually possible to capture that and place in architectural space and create emotions out of it? Now, on the stage, people have done it, or what Sai showed, that you can do it in an enclosed environment because you have much more control over it. But how do you do it in an architectural space where you have no control over the movement of the sun, movement of the clouds? But your attempt has always been to capture those emotions, connect it with light, and finally weave a story out of it. And most of us architects spend most of our life struggling to find that kind of try to weave that story, and the way the story unfolds with the quality of space, quality of light, and you move in one direction, you get one kind of experience, move in other direction, you sort of change the whole story. So you take a cube, which is a dark space, and you start puncturing it, and you start bringing light into it. And that quality of light, you try to control it for a specific activity that you are designing for. So that beam of light which comes in and connects with the emotion becomes very, very important. And these two images always fascinate me. This is Michelangelo's David. And just by changing the source of light, these two images look so very different. And this has always been a kind of an inspirational picture for me. I said, this is a skill of Michelangelo to connect light and emotions. Can you do it in architectural space? But dealing with light is, again, it's about sustainability. It's about understanding the movement of sun. And one advantage what we have is this sun movement is a measured kind of a thing. We exactly know on a particular day what would be the position of the sun and what would be the direction of the sun, what would the angle of the sun. So we have that possibility of playing with that. And I'll show some of the examples where we have tried to do that. This is NIFT Hyderabad, where we try to sort of, when you're talking about the sustainability, you should allow the light to come in, but not the heat. And you've tried to find ways of doing that. So here you are trying to sort of block the direct sun coming from the western side, but still allow the light to come in through these gaps. Or this another example, which was a library sketch, where you try to take even the western light inside and then try to reflect it off the thing and try to spread it out. So you allow the light to come in, but don't allow the heat to come in. And that's the skill which most of us have to develop. There is a light and mathematics as well. And you, as I said, you know exactly precise the direction of the sun throughout the year. And this has happened in Abu Simbel. And this was a project which was in 80s, which this Abu Simbel temple was coming under the flood level, and there was a UNESCO project where this whole project had to be lifted up. But on a particular day, the light enters the sanctum sanctorium and hits right down into that, in the axis. That's supposed to be the birthday of that pharaoh. So when this temple was shifted up above the high flood level, it was highly insured project, and some of these surveyors, they had to assure that the same light on the same day would come in and hit that sanctum sanctorium. And it was a mathematics. I mean, if you exactly follow the same orientation and same thing, you can. So it's like a mathematics. There is a light and technology also. And this technology where you know about this building is one of the first few, which actually John Nouvel's building in Paris, Arab Institute, where you have these, it's like a lens which keeps reacting to the direction of the sun and the quantum of light and controls the light coming in. So in this house where we were just trying to play with that quality of light, and we had these operable lures on the top. So it's like a room within a room, space within the space. And we could really change change the quality of light just by playing with these, the movement of the lures. So it's like a magic box. Like a kid, you can sit and just open it and close it and just see the change happening. So it's fun. So sometimes you can make it completely blank. You can keep some of them open, some of them closed. So that's a kind of fun with the technology. But traditionally, we have been sort of masters, using that filtered light coming into the space, into our bazaars. And now slowly, this plastic has come in, but still you have that nice quality of colors coming in. And so you see that traditionally that transformation happening from, the jalis or those, to using these kind of mats. And especially South Indian temples, you see that change of light happening dramatically, and you go from one layer to another and to the third. So as you go in, the quality of light changes. It becomes slightly more from brighter to slightly lesser bright, then to slightly more darker. And finally, you go into the Garbhagriha, which is the darkest spot, and it symbolizes infinity. And it's during that whole process, not only the light changes, even the temperature changes, the sound quality changes, the smell changes, and you really feel that whole transformation happening from outdoor to indoor. And finally, you really look at that one spot of light, and that really symbol of infinity. That's in cathedrals. It's done by just increasing the entire volume and creating that grandeur. Here, in this case, you really create one dark space, put one small light, and still create that sense of infinity, which is quite amazing. So that importance of that. But slowly our cities are becoming more and more transparent, more and more reflective, and finally, what is it reflecting? It's just some passing cloud or something. So in the process, we are losing that ray of light that we valued so much. And for that ray of light to be present, you have to have right kind of enclosure. And that darkness, what again Sai was talking about, that importance of darkness, it's not just the light, but the darkness as well. And this is an amazing statement by Louis Kahn. He said the sun never knew how wonderful it was until it fell on the wall of a building. So you need to have a wall of a building, and you need to have surfaces, and you have to have multiple surfaces, and then it creates this whole drama. And it could be even smoke, like I showed some images of a fog. You need to have a medium to be present in the enclosure to create that whole drama of the light to happen. So we keep playing with this. This is Unilever's research center. So you create these layers of light, layers of shadows, multiple planes. It's about reflecting light also. It's not just about throwing the light, it's reflecting off the surface. And that's what most of the studios, the photographers do it. But in architectural space, how do you do it? Because each material has different quality of reflectivity. The water has a different reflectivity. The flooring material, you could use polish, you could use semi-polish, you could use rough, and create that play of reflection of light, and which we try to sort of do it in many projects. This is Sagrada Familia. This is Antoni Gaudi's project, which was recently redone. But see the kind of colors they have used to just reflect that colors onto the wall, onto those walls. And if you look at it, it's almost like the stained glass window, which has one prominent color in that whole formation. So that color takes over as a reflection, which is absolutely amazing. Now, if you look at Kerala, where the heat is so much and there's so much of sun radiation, it's important to sort of not allow that radiation to come into the building. So you try to reflect the sun from the ground and take the reflected light into the space. And that's how you subdued the thing. So all the roofs come down in order to reflect the light off and then you get this amazing quality of quietness, the reflected light. And then when that surface, instead of grass, when it becomes water, that quality is again quite amazing, which you see in lot of these kind of buildings in Kerala. These are all bathing ghats and things like that. But see this gap, which is hardly, maybe about 1 foot or 2 feet. But when you go inside the light, the way it reflects inside is quite amazing. And conventionally, we are not used to light coming from below because we are always used to getting light from the top. So once the light comes from below, your face looks different, your whole ambience looks different. And when this movement in the water happens, then the whole quality of space changes. It's very, very dramatic. We tried to use something similar when we did this hospice, which is for terminally ill patients. That's where most of the patients just sleep on the floor or sleep on the bed and keep looking at a ceiling with a fan rotating. So we wanted this reflection of the water to fall onto the ceiling, and you would have that movement happening on the ceiling. And this patient who is looking up at the ceiling has something to look at, from somewhere by some kind of a magic, it just moves from somewhere and falls. So that's something which is quite interesting. In Cambodia, people use, this mainly for climatic reasons, because the water has to flow and then the air has to move all around because of the hot, humid climate. But because of that, you get a light from the floor. And then something similar to what I was talking about in Kerala. And this quality of light is again quite amazing. It's about the framing the light, the framing image as well. So you intentionally create a darkness around the object which is in light. So you have examples historically where you intentionally create a darkness around a building. And this is one of our projects, a library in ISC, where you sort of play with these frames which are in, and then it's not just one frame. You have multiple frames, and you create that drama of light and shade and light and shade, and it just goes on continuously happening. And that's possible, especially in tropics, because we get a sun from vertical direction, whereas in the West you have sun which is much more horizontal. So in the West you see most of the shadows happening more horizontal, almost like a projector kind of a thing on the wall. But we have this advantage of playing with, we get shadows like this, which fall onto the floor predominantly, and that's why we can create that, series of light and shade frames, and again you exploit it further. This is one path of discovery. What we were doing this research center called Origin Research, and we created a path of discovery which you sort of go through this whole ambience, and this path keeps moving around with the natural light coming in, and then you come into this large space which has a kind of a sudden surprise, and the natural light coming into the space which keeps changing. But during the night we wanted the same kind of quality to be repeated. So the openings which we are bringing in natural light start bringing in artificial light into the space. And we wanted to have that very carved out kind of a space where the floor becomes a wall and wall becomes a ceiling. So we wanted to render the whole space with one color. So the same kind of a color sort of continues across the space. And it feels as if it's like a rock cut kind of a thing. I'm just ending it with one memorial which we just finished, and this is in Hyderabad, and we were trying to sort of create that same idea of layering, and you go from one layer to another into the third layer. Here it was very important to deal with light, texture of the material, and the whole ambience which would change from morning to evening, and then when it changes from natural light to artificial light, and how really you deal with that filtered kind of light coming in. So you have this whole axis which sort of goes up to the samadhi. I won't get into the details of that, but just to show the type of thing. So these are series of frames. So before entering the place, you sort of see the water coming in, the reflectivity of water, the reflection of that, the light coming, filtered light coming through the leaves. And you turn around and you walk through this space, and you again turn left, again water coming through the series of display spaces. Again, there is just one sheet of water which just goes across, and this is, yeah, I'll take 2 minutes more. So you see that void, which is a samadhi, and you see the presence of absence, as you call it, the emptiness that gets reflected into the water. And the same space, that's the void, which again, I'm talking about reflectivity of water, the filtered light coming through. And slowly, as the light starts going down at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, slowly these artificial lights start coming in. The pockets start getting lit up, start getting reflected. Only these edges get lit up. We worked with Linus Lopez, who is one of the lighting designers from Delhi, to you for this. So we wanted only these edges of the walls to be lit up. Then slowly this whole thing starts getting floated up. These niches start getting lit up. The whole idea was it starts with very less, becomes more, eventually connect with the stars. So it's about the connection with the materiality, with more abstract form. And then different frames. And as the darkness comes, the whole ambience changes. And that's it. I think that was the whole transition. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the amazing presentation. Now I would like to invite architect Ashmit Alag to start with his presentation. Friends, please welcome architect Ashmit Alag with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to start by saying that everything which has to do with vision has to do with light. And hence, anything can be changed in terms of its depth perception, its contrast, in terms of its visual perception, which can also add to the sense of depth, height, and gloss factor purely with it. I'll start this with an example of a retail environment, which would be interiors, primarily to also gauge a reaction in terms of how it is, and share with you how we see things and how we perceive them. So this is going to be a question to all of you. In this store which sells watches, if this is display A, which is on the extreme left, if this one is A, if this one is B, this is C, and this is D. I'll explain again. If this is A, this is B, this is C, and this is D. How many people think A has the most expensive watches? Okay. How many people think D has the most expensive watches? You'll have to look around for statistics as well. How many people think C has the most expensive watches? And B? Okay. So I'll ask the first question again. How many people think this has the most expensive watches? Please look around for statistics. Well, it just appears so. Thank you. The reason why it appears so is because it is in yellow light. The reason why, usually speaking, this or this would appear to be the most inexpensive or the cheapest is one, because it has white light, which is almost going towards bluish. And the second part is accessibility. The thing in theory is that the more inaccessible something is, the more exclusive it becomes. Also the height. How many people think only among the two of them? So this is C and this is D. How many people think C is cheaper than D? How many people think D is cheaper than C? Look around for statistics. It's almost 100%. Yep. Now, we don't know. The reality is we don't know. It's only based on perception. So you can tune lighting to create a kind of perception. It's usually predisposed. So lighting, of course, can create a lot of drama. You can also create a story without saying anything in words. And that's how a good design would be, that it doesn't need to explain itself. When we talk about retail design, we say in retail, a store is a silent salesman, in which you don't need to sell yourself. You don't need to speak anything. Because in any case, we don't trust salespeople. Now, there's a story over here which is going on, and it's intriguing. Lighting can also be creating areas which could be a little scary to look at, like this. This is beautiful to look at, but it's not inviting. It's in Europe, hence it's safe, but it's still not inviting. Or it can create areas which appear to be larger than life. So the reason why the top part is only lifted, and this is not lifted in terms of lighting at all, because it gives it a sense of depth perception. It raises the height. It makes the buildings look much taller than what it is. This part always would look taller till the time you start comparing it with the road and the width and the lamppost, and suddenly it starts appearing shorter. That's primarily to do with the verticalness of the lighting. It can also, of course, make spaces look much more calmer. So if we look at this, and if you look at this and this similar color scheme, in daytime it'll have a very similar color scheme, but it can change the contour altogether to something which is a lot more inviting. It can be easily assumed that, I'm going to skip the slide and go back. I want you to pay attention to what is the first thing that you see. Not the second, not the third, the first thing that you see. And I guarantee and challenge that it'll always be the same thing that all of us see. Because it's based on perception, based on focal point. It's like saying what makes red bold and attractive. You know, we might like the color red, we might not like it, but it has to be bold and attractive. But there are scientific reasons for it. So I'm going to skip and pay attention and tell me what is the first thing that you see. What was it? Sorry, the pathway? Yeah. So it'll always be like that because it has to do with contrast. So lighting generates contrast. What is also the least amount of money and time spent on in terms of architecture and execution is also the pathway. Yep. So a lot of details you can kind of improvise on, bring it. There's a theory which is called the theory of opulent spaces. Now the theory of opulent spaces speaks that the moment we enter into an area which we believe is much more opulent than we are, and that opulence can come in terms of shape, size, richness, education, seniority, or any of the things which we perceive that the environment is going to be very opulent in. The moment we enter such a space, we would shut up. We would reduce. If you're speaking on a cell phone, and if you enter into a very high-end 5-star hotel that you've never been before, only that could create the opulence. Or if you enter into a party where you do not know a lot of people, or you enter into the principal's room for the first time. So the moment you would enter, your footsteps would narrow down. Your hands would come closer to your body. If you're speaking on a cell phone, the cell phone will come closer to your face. In short, what is happening is if we look at a human being in plan, he is reducing. Now, white light does just the opposite. So a thumb rule is the whiter it is and the brighter it is, the more words per minute we talk at a higher volume. The body expands. We become much more casual, much more dynamic rather, let's say. And the opposite that would be achieved with yellow lighting, too yellow to almost go up to amber. That's one of the reasons you will never find a fine dining restaurant in white light. It is not that no designer can attempt or try for it, but the result would be so miserable it wouldn't even leave track. The easiest way of doing that is with lighting. We work for a few banks, some private high-end banks, and NDA ensures we can't even speak out the names. But under the desk, there are 4 modes that we give, and we also do it for restaurants. I'll explain restaurants first. In the restaurant, just with the lighting button, so just by dimming and increasing the amount of white light or yellow light, you can make people eat faster and leave faster. And you can also make people eat slower and sit longer, and hence the restaurant appears to be successful for a longer time. For the banks, you can make people more gullible, you can make people aggressive, defensive, you can almost make people to start taking notes. That's the extent you can make them defensive. You can also make them dismissive, primarily by the tuning of the yellow and the blue light. Blue I'm using to extend the white in that event. There are a few things when it comes to lighting as part of the perception. First is people follow the brightest path. There was a study which was conducted in the 1970s, then in 1990, and then another study which was conducted just at the beginning of this year, which was, there was a big room and then there was a partition in the center of it, and people were asked to get behind the room, so you can enter even from left or you can enter from the right. But the partition was in the center, so you couldn't see, and there was a desk. In the recent experiment, they were told to just sign on the notepad before they entered the room. Majority of the people turned right after they signed in. Now, this is done in America. It would be just the opposite for India. In India, Indians typically move and enter towards left and look towards left when it comes to a new space. In America, it happens the opposite. In England, it happens the same as India. Now, majority of people, let's say about 76% in the recent study, were moving from the right-hand side after they signed their name. But when the light was increased 3 times more than the one on the right-hand side, primarily using uplighters, 83% people started moving towards the left, which basically proves that people followed the brightest path, just like the moth. The other thing is, when it comes to comfort, people usually choose to sit in a darker area or against a corner. People don't like to sit right in the center. Yeah, it doesn't make them very comfortable. So facing wall luminance is a preference, which means you might be sitting in shade, but you want to look towards the brightness. So some of the images which have also been showed previously in both the presentation is that you're looking at the brighter side, but you're sitting on the dimmer aspect of it, more in a shade. And then lighting can affect body position. So as an architect, as an interior designer, you can choose in what direction people would be sitting. You can choose to give a blare so that they don't face that ways. If you're doing a coffee shop and you know people are going to be working on laptops, you can choose to do surface behind, which would be shining off the screen so people would not be sitting that direction. So you can control that too, because you don't want somebody to be sitting with a laptop facing the doorway and 5 or 6 of them. It just makes the space look very unwelcoming. So you do brighter signboard behind it. So that's how basically you're using psychology to be able to derive and get to a better design result. This is Russell's theory. It's about 40 years old theory now, talking about how to create environments, primarily using lighting. So according to this, and I'll move to the next one, for an area to become pleasant, non-uniformity of lighting is extremely important, which should be primarily done with wall lighting, because wall lighting would almost always be non-uniform. And ceiling light would be a little bit more uniform because it also gets to reflect from the surface and go back on the floor. Public lighting, however, has to be more uniform, which can only come from overhead lighting. To create a sense of space, there's nothing like a cove light. So if you have a cove light, which is a peripheral light, it will always make the space look bigger. Relaxed would also be non-uniform, but lower lighting levels. And visually clear, which is primarily to do with the task lighting, to reduce the amount of eye fatigue. In terms of the color temperature, so if we look at the screen again, and notice the emotion that you might have. Doesn't it all of a sudden feel a little cold, like a shrill? Doesn't it? And it becomes a little warmer, doesn't it? Do you feel the shrill? It would usually give the shrill right over here in this part, and it just gets condensed. And this kind of lighting is also used, in barricading, where there are human barricading involved, especially in airports now, that you want the people to squint, lose power. To areas like this, which are more neutral but comforting, to absolutely doing areas which are yellow or extending themselves to be an amber lighting, which is this. So the thing about psychology over here is, do you expect little kids in this environment? No. Do you expect people to be talking at a louder volume in this environment? So see how you're controlling them? Purely by design. You cannot control them by laws, but you can control them by design. Yeah? One usually does an experiment. Well, thank you. Thank you. If you look at this, what do you think? This is a cheap environment or an expensive environment? Expensive, yeah, but it actually is not expensive. You know, surprisingly, if you look at these glasses, they're not even the same size, so they're of course not expensive. You know, and the kind of the salt and pepper shaker, which some people can be seeing over here, the only expensive thing over here are those Venetian lights, because before we enter a space, we always look at the ceiling visually, but subconsciously we look at the floor first, because it's to do with the way walking and the sense of safety. Yeah, but people remember looking at the ceiling first. So in this case, none of this at the bottom. You see, this chair is not expensive at all. In fact, none of this is. And even though it takes about 50% of the screen, the brain's not interested, because the brain's actually only interested in better or worse. Brain is not interested in anything normal. If you've been around for an hour or more, and you've seen probably a few hundred billboards, signages, posters, how many do you remember? You would probably only remember 1 or 2 or 3, the ones which have to be unique. If you're coming from home or office till here, and on the street you've seen thousands of billboards, how many do you remember? Probably 0. In retail, how we bounce it off is also in terms of physical activity, that you might have seen hundreds of stores in a mall, but you wouldn't remember one. But if you open the door of a single store, you'll remember it for weeks, because there's also physical activity involved. And take this, for instance. This is a meeting room, right? A regular meeting room. But you can make people calm down and speak at a lesser volume by changing the lighting. So isn't this more dynamic, more energetic than this? Yeah? So this can almost get to the conference room. What is the expense? We're looking at a few thousand rupees. And you don't even need to have a lighting automatic control. You can just use dimmers. You know, dim one and do the other one. In retail, of course, the point is to not sell the merchandise. When it comes to luxury and premium retailing, you're never selling the merchandise. You're helping the person to evolve. You know, it's like you buy this and you become this. Yeah, you buy this and you become more evolved or more intelligent or wiser. The characteristic of this dress, for instance, is highlighted by the lighting, where you see that there's very little lighting. All the lighting, however, is coming only from the floor. And then it bounces off the ceiling a little bit, and then it falls. And as a result, this part looks the heaviest, but this seems to be floating away. So you're creating a sense of lightness in this. In this, you're increasing the intrigue. This is probably about a 6 or 7 years old slide. I've still not been able to find a slide which beats it. This is also explaining how focal points is and trying to take the radiation away. Now, if you look at this, for instance, the attention would usually come over here and not go on these aspects. So you can control that too. And also, of course, you can raise the level of intrigue, and you can make things appear much more expensive and exclusive than they really are. That'll be all for me. Thank you.